Good evening, weary traveler, and welcome once more to a tranquil journey through the quiet, vast, and profoundly different corridors of human history, as the day's last golden light softly, slowly, and peacefully fades away, retreating beyond the distant horizon, and the modern world outside your window begins its gentle, nightly hush. We extend to you a warm invitation. We encourage you to settle deeply, very deeply, into your most comfortable and secure space. Allow your thoughts to gently and serenely unwind, slowly untangling themselves from the day's persistent concerns. Prepare your mind calmly and patiently for a truly immersive yet profoundly tranquil voyage into a time long past, to a world where childhood, as we understand it today, was an almost alien concept, and every single day brought a familiar, predictable, and deeply repetitive toil, often from a very tender age. Tonight, we will venture far, far beyond the hurried, often fragmented rhythm of our contemporary existence. We will turn our gaze, with deliberate intention, towards a pivotal, iconic, and often romanticized era in European history, the vast, sprawling expanse of the medieval period. Specifically, our focus will be on the dark, dull lives of medieval children. You'd never last a day, providing a deep, meticulous dive into the often unseen, untalked about realities of daily life for the youngest members of medieval society. This is a narrative that seeks to transcend the grand tales of kings and knights, of castles and crusades, and even the idyllic depictions of simple village life. Instead, we will delve into the harsh, often unyielding, yet deeply repetitive and surprisingly uniform routines that governed the most intimate aspects of a child's existence. From dawn until the very last glimmer of twilight, this was a world bound by different understandings of family, by limited resources, by profound physical demands, and by pervasive, persistent challenges that would profoundly test the very sensibilities of a modern individual, especially a modern child. Imagine, for a long, quiet, contemplative moment, a childhood dictated not by playful freedom or leisurely education, but by the relentless, unceasing demands of survival, by the constant presence of labor, and by the sheer overwhelming proximity to the daily struggles of adults. A world where the dawn brought not the promise of joyous games, but the absolute certainty of familiar, unceasing tasks, where every precious hour, every single minute, was consumed by chores performed amidst pervasive grime, within homes and fields saturated with unpleasantly strong, persistent odors, under the ever-present watchful gaze of a frequently overcast sky or a scorching sun. This was a life of quiet, profound endurance, of deep physical engagement with a constantly demanding environment, and of an almost hypnotic monotony that paradoxically can now serve to lull the modern mind into a state of deep calm, a gentle invitation to surrender to a simpler, more arduous, and certainly more pungent rhythm of existence. We will explore the subtle, yet pervasive sounds of children working, the distant rustle of straw, the constant low murmur of communal living, and the rhythmic splash of water, often unsanitary, being carried or discarded. This is a story not of heroic battles or dramatic political intrigues, but of the silent, persistent grind of daily existence, of the human spirit's quiet resilience in the face of overwhelming natural and man-made impurities, unpredictable outbreaks of disease, and profound sensory challenges. It is a narrative woven from countless threads of physical discomfort, of ceaseless, repetitive motions, and of the subtle yet ever-present challenges of basic survival, of contributing to the family unit from a very tender age, and of navigating social norms in a world where play was a luxury often misunderstood and rarely prioritized. It is designed to be a gentle lullaby, an invitation for your own mind to find its perfect stillness, allowing the rhythmic, unceasing sounds and detailed, often startling, sensations of a bygone era to guide you towards a truly restorative rest. So now, as you listen, breathe deeply, very deeply, letting your chest gently rise and fall with each breath. Feel the comforting, soft weight of your blankets surrounding you, wrapping you in a cocoon of warmth and security. Feel the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breath, a quiet anchor in the present moment. And finally, allow your mind to simply drift, to slowly, peacefully, begin its imagined journey into this rugged, ancient, and profoundly tranquil historical landscape. Let the whispers of a forgotten childhood and the imagined echoes of countless daily routines guide your thoughts serenely and without haste, towards a state of profound stillness, ultimate peace, and a truly restful, dream-filled sleep. having gently settled ourselves into the contemplation of a bygone era, allowing our minds to slowly drift towards the vast open landscapes of human endeavor, let us now transport our thoughts calmly and with profound understanding to the very heart of medieval Europe, to a time when life was dictated not by the carefree joys of childhood or the pursuit of academic learning, but by the relentless, unwavering rhythms of the earth, the seasons, and the unyielding demands of mere survival. We are about to immerse ourselves not in the grand castles or the intricate lives of knights, nor even the adult struggles of the peasant farmer, but in the raw, relentless, and profoundly repetitive reality of daily existence for the very youngest members of medieval society, the medieval child. This is a story of sheer, quiet endurance, of sensory immersion in a world fundamentally bound to the earth and its unpredictable whims, and of the unique kind of weariness that only constant, cyclical, manual labor, performed from a tender age, can induce, a weariness so deep it might paradoxically lull your own mind into a profound and dreamless sleep. Imagine, for a long, quiet moment, the very start of such a day for a medieval child, deeply rooted in the ancient patterns of rural existence, yet profoundly different from any modern childhood. The hour is impossibly early, long before the first hint of golden light has even begun to paint the cold, grey eastern sky, which is still shrouded in the deep, cool, indigo blue of predawn. You are awakened not by a jarring alarm, nor by the subtle shift in air, but by the internal clock of your own small body, a profound, ingrained rhythm attuned to the necessities of family survival. Perhaps the faint, distant crow of a rooster from a neighboring hut, its call thin and sharp in the cold air, or the low, almost imperceptible murmur of your parents beginning to stir on their own sleeping mats beside you, gently pulls you back from the depths of sleep. Your small, simple mud and wattle home, its walls made of rough-hewn timber, woven with branches and plastered with clay and straw. Its roof thickly thatched with layers of straw or reeds feels cool and dark, its thick, insulating structure still holding the night's coolness against the encroaching morning warmth. The air within carries a complex, earthy, comforting scent: dried mud, old straw from the sleeping mats, wood smoke lingering from last night's small central fire in the hearth, and the subtle, unmistakable aroma of human presence, a blend of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, and perhaps persistent animal odors from shared living spaces. There is no soft, yielding bed to linger in. Your sleeping mat, woven from coarse straw or rushes, lies directly on the packed earth floor, offering only a firm, utilitarian comfort. Its rough texture, a constant, subtle reminder of your humble station. You rise slowly, stiffly, your small muscles already aching with a deep, persistent soreness from yesterday's relentless toil. A low, constant thrum of fatigue already present deep within your young limbs. The floor beneath your bare feet is cool, rough earth, its uneven texture familiar against your soles, perhaps even slightly damp or gritty. The process of preparing for the day is quick, efficient, and deeply habitual, utterly devoid of any lingering luxury or modern convenience of personal care, particularly for a child. There is no running water piped into your dwelling. There is no private latrine, no indoor plumbing. Instead, one of the family members, perhaps an older sibling or your mother, might carry a simple wooden bucket or a rough clay pot of water, brought from a communal well or nearby stream the previous evening. Imagine splashing a meager handful of cold, often murky, water onto your small face, feeling its sharp, bracing coolness awaken your skin, a fleeting moment of raw freshness quickly absorbed by the dry, still morning air, leaving behind only the subtle scent of damp earth and stale morning air. Your hair, coarse and practical, often long and unkempt, is quickly smoothed with your fingers, perhaps still matted from sleep. Your clothing is simple, unadorned, reflecting your peasant status and the demands of physical labor. A rough woolen tunic or a homespun linen shift, perhaps a pair of coarse woolen breeches or leggings, garments chosen for their durability against thorns, rough earth, and persistent wear rather than for any comfort or appearance. Its fabric feels thick, almost stiff, against your small body, a familiar, unchanging sensation that defines your daily attire, and often carries the faint, ingrained scent of wood smoke, sweat, and persistent body odor from days of wear without washing. The air in the tiny hut is still heavy, filled with the quiet, anticipatory hum of the impending workday. There is little time for idle conversation. The profound silence of the pre-dawn household is broken only by your own soft breathing and the subtle rustle of worn clothing as everyone, including you, prepares to face the monumental tasks ahead. Breakfast, a crucial source of raw energy for the grueling hours ahead, is meek, and quickly consumed by all family members, often huddled together around the dying embers of the central hearth. Its warmth a small, welcome comfort against the morning chill. It consists primarily of basic, nourishing staples, reflecting the direct bounty, or scarcity, of the land. Perhaps a piece of dark, hard, unleavened bread, its texture rough and dense against your young tongue, softened with a few sips of simple, unfiltered water or weak ale, which was often safer to drink than pure, unboiled water. Or perhaps a small bowl of thick, warm gruel, made from boiled oats, barley, or peas, tasting faintly of earth and smoke from the hearth. The aromas are simple, earthy, utilitarian, reflecting the direct, unadorned bounty of the immediate land. This meal is not consumed for pleasure or social enjoyment, but purely for fundamental sustenance, providing the minimal, essential fuel necessary for your small, growing body to endure the long, demanding hours ahead. It is consumed swiftly, silently, almost mechanically, a direct reflection of the day's unyielding schedule. There is no lingering, no extended conversation. The focus is entirely on the quick intake of calories before the sun begins its relentless ascent, and the communal fields, or the countless household chores, call out for your labor. The morning relief of bodily functions, a universally necessary act, was handled by medieval children in ways that would deeply shock modern sensibilities, contributing massively to the pervasive squalor. There was no concept of a flushing toilet or a private outhouse. Instead, human waste was often disposed of directly into the nearest ditch, into a designated midden or refuse pile just outside the hut, or simply into the communal street or courtyard, particularly in more crowded villages or towns. Imagine the earthy, pungent, and profoundly unpleasant odor that would hang perpetually in the air around these areas, especially on a warm, still morning. The subtle buzzing of flies drawn to the waste would be a constant, irritating sound. The ground itself, around the hut or in the village paths, would be a constant, subtle hazard, often muddy and slippery with a mixture of animal dung, human waste, and household refuse. The sheer practicality of medieval life dictated a certain tolerance for such pervasive odors and unsanitary conditions. There was simply no widespread technology or understanding to manage waste in a truly hygienic manner. This routine, though natural, contributed massively to the pervasive, unwashed reality of the medieval world, a continuous, inescapable part of daily life, which a child quickly learned to accept. For medieval children, play was not a distinct, separate activity but often deeply intertwined with their essential labor. From a very young age, as soon as they were able to walk and carry small objects, children were expected to contribute to the family's survival. Imagine a child, perhaps only 5 or 6 years old, their small hands already becoming accustomed to rough textures, being sent out to gather firewood. The task is simple, yet crucial. You would walk slowly, deliberately, through the nearby woods, your small feet crunching softly on the dry leaves, searching for fallen twigs and small branches. The air is cool, crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The sounds would be the gentle rustle of leaves as you searched, the distant calls of unseen birds, the soft snap of a twig as you picked it up. Your small arms would slowly, laboriously, gather a bundle of these twigs, their rough bark feeling uneven against your skin, their weight a subtle, growing burden as you carried them back to the hut. This was not a game. It was a necessary chore, a quiet contribution to the warmth and sustenance of your family. The repetitive motion of bending, gathering, and carrying, performed day after day, slowly built strength in your young body. As you grew slightly older, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, your responsibilities would slowly, gradually increase, becoming more demanding yet still profoundly repetitive. Imagine being tasked with tending the family's few domestic animals. You might be sent out to shepherd a handful of sheep or a single cow in a nearby pasture. The sounds would be the gentle bleating of the animals, the soft rustle of grass as they grazed, the rhythmic jingle of a small bell around the lead-used neck. Your job is to simply watch, patiently, for long, silent hours, ensuring the animals do not stray into neighboring fields or wander too close to the forest where wild predators might lurk. This requires immense patience for a young child, a quiet, unwavering vigilance. You might sit for hours on a simple stone or a fallen log, your gaze fixed on the slow, deliberate movements of the animals, your mind perhaps drifting, or simply observing the minute details of the clouds above, or the slow crawl of an insect on a blade of grass. The monotony of this task, the stillness required, slowly shapes your understanding of responsibility and the rhythms of nature. For children whose families lived in the communal fields, Their labor began early and often directly alongside their parents. Imagine a young child, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, walking slowly behind their father or older brother as they guide a wooden plow through the rich, dark earth. Your task might be to simply walk in the newly turned furrow, carefully picking out any large stones or stubborn roots that might impede the next pass of the plow. Your small hands, already calloused, would feel the cool, damp earth, its gritty texture familiar. The sounds are distinct and deeply repetitive. The soft snorting of the oxen, the deep creak of the wooden plow, the pervasive rustle of soil being disturbed, and the rhythmic crunch of your own feet on the newly turned earth. This motion is repeated countless times, back and forth, across the seemingly endless field, a ceaseless, precise dance between your small body, the animals, and the demanding earth. The physical strain is constant, a deep, persistent ache in your back and legs, but the rhythm is hypnotic, almost meditative, allowing your young mind to drift into a state of quiet, focused endurance, merging with the ancient cycle. During planting season, you would join your family in the slow, deliberate work of sowing seeds. Imagine your small hand, holding a small pouch filled with precious barley or rye seeds, moving with a practiced, rhythmic sweep, scattering the seeds into the waiting furrows. The sound is subtle, almost imperceptible. The soft rustle of seeds in your hand, the faintest patter as they land on the earth, and the gentle whisper of the breeze. This precise, repetitive motion is performed again and again, across the entire communal field, an endless progression of sowing. Each tiny seed a silent promise of future sustenance, a quiet investment in the coming year. The aroma of the raw seeds, earthy and subtly sweet, fills your nostrils, an unchanging, comforting part of your sensory world, connecting your small hands to the very essence of life. Even when allowed to play, a medieval child's games were often simple, practical, and deeply rooted in their environment. There were no elaborate manufactured toys, no complex board games. Instead, imagination transformed mundane objects into playthings. Imagine a group of children, perhaps in a dusty village square or a quiet clearing near the forest, playing with sticks, stones, or small pieces of wood. A stick might become a sword, a horse, or a plow. Smooth riverstones might be arranged into complex patterns, or used for simple throwing games, their soft clinking sounds filling the air. The games were repetitive, often mimicking the adult tasks they observed daily: mock plowing with sticks, pretend hunting, or small housekeeping chores with found objects. The sounds of their play would be soft, rhythmic, almost imperceptible, the gentle scraping of sticks on dirt, the quiet murmur of voices in imaginative play, the soft thud of a thrown stone. This was not the boisterous, loud play of modern children, but a quiet, deeply imaginative engagement with their limited, natural world. The clothing worn by medieval children further contributed to the pervasive, unhygienic conditions. Like their parents, children's clothes were rarely washed. Fabrics like coarse wool and thick linen, though durable, were difficult to clean without modern soaps and methods. Imagine a child wearing the same rough woolen tunic for weeks, perhaps even months, at a time, without a thorough cleaning. The fabric would slowly accumulate layers of dirt, of sweat, of food stains, and of the various pervasive odors of daily life: wood smoke, animal dung, damp earth, human effluvia. The texture of the cloth would become stiff, almost crusty, against their small body. The subtle itch from accumulated dirt, from unseen parasites like fleas or lice, would be a constant, irritating sensation, an unavoidable part of medieval childhood existence. Cleanliness, as we understand it, was a luxury almost entirely unknown. The pervasive silence of the medieval countryside, punctuated only by the sounds of nature or your own deliberate labor, could be profoundly isolating, even for a child. You might go days, even weeks, without seeing another human face beyond your immediate family and a few close neighbors. The sounds of the wilderness, the ceaseless whisper of the wind through the tall, ancient trees, the distant calls of wild animals, the rhythmic drumming of rain on the hut roof, the gentle splash of a nearby stream, become your constant companions, blending into a raw, natural symphony. This immense, unbroken silence can be both profoundly comforting, allowing for deep introspection, and at times, deeply unsettling, almost unnerving, emphasizing your profound solitude and complete reliance on your own small self within the vastness of nature. Your thoughts become your primary, indeed your only companions, a constant internal monologue. As you observe the minute, almost imperceptible details of the passing wilderness, a new leaf unfurling, a small insect crossing your path, the subtle shifts in cloud formations, the steady flow of a stream, This forced solitude, this immense quietude, could lead to a deep, meditative state, a profound connection with the self and the vastness around you, or it could amplify any underlying anxieties, emphasizing your complete dependence on your family's resourcefulness. As the sun began its slow, gradual descent towards the western horizon, painting the sky with fiery oranges, deep purples, and soft, fading blues, the air gradually, slowly, began to cool again, bringing with it the biting, penetrating chill of the medieval night. The shadows lengthened, stretching endlessly across the fields and through the village, before finally, inevitably, merging into the complete, profound darkness of night. The family, weary from their day's toil, would slowly gather back in the small, warm embrace of their hut. The evening meal, like breakfast, was simple, communal, and often eaten in quiet contemplation. After the meal, there might be a brief period of quiet family time, mending clothes by the flickering firelight, repairing simple tools, or engaging in quiet storytelling, passing down oral traditions and folk tales to the children, their voices soft and rhythmic in the quiet room. These were the simple, profound joys found in the stillness of family, a quiet refuge from the endless, structured toil, and the persistent, challenging realities of medieval childhood. Sleep, for the medieval child, was not a luxury but a profound necessity. A deep surrender to sheer physical and mental exhaustion. All family members would share the same small sleeping space, lying together on their straw mats, seeking warmth and comfort in close proximity. The sounds of the hut at night would be the soft, rhythmic breathing of sleeping family members, the gentle crackling of the dying fire in the hearth, the subtle creak of old timbers as the hut responded to the cooling night air, and the distant, muffled calls of nocturnal animals from the surrounding forest, all blending into a soothing, natural lullaby. This deep, shared sleep, born of an entire day of unyielding physical labor and constant acclimation to their unwashed reality, prepared their small, growing bodies for the inevitable, relentless rhythm of the coming dawn, knowing that tomorrow the sun would rise again, and the endless, silent, demanding routines of medieval life, with all its pungent realities, would simply, quietly, continue guiding them, through sheer weariness, towards a deep, restorative sleep, a peaceful surrender to the ancient, eternal patterns of existence. Having deeply immersed ourselves in the stark, unyielding realities of a medieval child's early life, feeling the persistent grime on their skin, sensing the pervasive odors of unwashed garments, and understanding the profound physical demands of their repetitive, yet essential, toil within the humble peasant hut and the vast, demanding fields, let us now, slowly and with a profound shift in perspective, turn our gaze. We are about to step into a vastly different, yet equally disciplined and profoundly shaping realm within the same ancient civilization. The institutional lives of medieval children, particularly those who were sent away from their families to serve and learn within the quiet, ordered walls of monasteries, or the bustling, yet highly structured, confines of medieval castles. This is a narrative that seeks to transcend romanticized notions of noble education or spiritual calling, delving instead into the harsh, often unyielding, yet deeply repetitive and surprisingly uniform routines that governed the lives of these young individuals, bound by the relentless, predictable, yet powerful demands of service learning and strict hierarchy, far from the familiar comforts of their birth homes. Imagine, for a long, quiet moment, a medieval child, perhaps only 7 or 8 years old, whose life is about to undergo a profound, permanent transformation. For many peasant families, sending a child to a monastery or a noble household was not a choice, born of luxury or ambition, but often of desperate necessity. A large family might simply have too many mouths to feed, too many hands for the limited land. For the child, this departure from the familiar, often chaotic, warmth of their birth family would have been a momentous, yet quietly solemn, event. Imagine the quiet goodbyes, the tearful embraces, the long, slow walk away from the only home they had ever known, towards an unknown, structured future. The sounds of their village, the familiar voices of their siblings, would slowly, gradually fade into the distance, replaced by the profound, unsettling silence of the journey ahead, a journey towards a new, demanding yet potentially more secure way of life. Let us first consider the path of a child sent to a monastery, often as an oblate or a young servant. This was a common practice, sometimes a pious offering from a noble family, but also a means for poorer families to ensure a child received an education and sustenance. Imagine a young child, perhaps a boy, stepping for the first time into the quiet, cool embrace of a Benedictine monastery. The sounds are immediately different. the rhythmic chanting of monks from the distant chapel, the soft scrape of sandals on stone floors, the gentle rustle of parchment in the scriptorium, all blending into a pervasive hum of spiritual order. The air carries the distinct, calming scent of old stone, beeswax, and incense, a stark contrast to the earthy smells of their village. Their initial days would be filled with a profound sense of awe, confusion, and overwhelming quiet. The daily routine for a child in a monastery was one of strict discipline, relentless repetition, and a continuous slow immersion into monastic life. They would rise before dawn, roused not by a parent's call, but by the same insistent, solemn clang of the monastery bell that awakened the monks. Imagine the young child, still sleepy, pulling on their simple, coarse woolen tunic, its rough fabric feeling unfamiliar against their skin. Their morning ablutions would be brief, cold, and functional, performed in silence. Then, they would join the monks in the chapel for matins, their small voice, perhaps initially faltering, slowly learning the rhythmic cadence of the Latin chants. The long hours spent kneeling on cold stone, listening to the monotonous drone of prayers, would have been physically demanding for a child accustomed to the freedom of the fields. The quiet endurance of these long services, day after day, slowly built a foundation of patience and spiritual discipline. Beyond prayer, the child's day would be filled with various forms of quiet service and meticulous education. Imagine the young boy, assigned to the scriptorium, sitting patiently at a low wooden desk, his small hands diligently preparing quills, sharpening their tips with a delicate knife, or carefully mixing inks from pigments. The sounds would be the soft scratch of the monks' pens, the gentle rustle of parchment, and the occasional hushed instruction from an older scribe. The smells would be of rich earth, of fragrant blossoms, of medicinal herbs drying in the sun. This was a slow, practical education, teaching them patience, observation, and a deep respect for meticulous work. Each task, no matter how small or repetitive, was performed with quiet diligence, as a form of service to God and the community. The education provided in monasteries, particularly for those destined to become monks or clerks, was rigorous and profoundly disciplined. Imagine a young child learning Latin, not through playful lessons, but through endless, repetitive memorization of grammar and vocabulary. They would copy passages from texts countless times, their small hands slowly forming the letters, until the script became perfectly legible. The sounds would be the soft murmur of their own voice, quietly reciting verses, the rhythmic scratch of their pen, and the gentle turning of pages. This was a quiet, intellectual toil, consuming many hours of their day, slowly building a foundation of literacy and classical knowledge. Far removed from the physical labor of their peasant counterparts, the quiet pursuit of knowledge, the slow, deliberate absorption of ancient texts, shaped their young minds in a profound way. Now, let us shift our attention to another path for medieval children: service in a noble household or a castle, often as a page or a squire. This was a common practice for sons of nobility or gentry, sent away from their own families at a tender age, typically around 7 years old, to serve and learn in a higher-ranking noble's household. For peasant children, this was a much rarer yet possible path, often as a less formal servant. Imagine a young boy, perhaps 7 years old, leaving the familiar warmth of his family, his small bundle of clothes clutched tightly in his hand, embarking on a journey to a grand, imposing castle. The sounds of his home, the familiar voices would fade, replaced by the profound, unsettling silence of the journey, and then by the bustling yet structured sounds of castle life. The clang of a distant hammer, the murmur of many voices, the clatter of swords in a practice yard. The daily routine for a page, the lowest rank of service in a noble household, was one of constant, quiet service, meticulous etiquette, and the very beginnings of his education as a future knight or nobleman. He would rise early, often before dawn, roused by the distant call of a castle horn or the soft footsteps of older squires. Imagine the young page, pulling on his simple tunic and breeches, the fabric coarse yet clean. His morning ablutions would be quick, cold, and functional. His primary duties involved attending to the personal needs of the lord and lady of the castle. He would assist in their dressing, ensuring their clothes were laid out, their shoes cleaned. He would run messages through the castle's vast, echoing corridors, his small footsteps quick and precise on the stone floors. He would serve at the dining table, standing silently, patiently, for long hours, pouring drinks, carrying dishes, and observing the complex etiquette of noble dining. The sounds would be the soft clinking of plates, the hushed murmur of noble conversation, the distant music of a lute, all blending into a backdrop of refined activity. Education for a page was primarily practical and observational. He would learn good manners, how to carve meat at the table, how to serve wine, how to carry himself with dignity and grace. His lessons in reading and writing, if he received any, would be rudimentary, often taught by a chaplain or a sympathetic lady. Imagine the young page in a quiet corner of the great hall or a small study, slowly painstakingly learning to form letters on a wax tablet or a small piece of parchment, his tongue perhaps tracing the shapes as he wrote. The sounds would be the soft scratching of his stylus, the quiet rustle of pages, the distant hum of castle life. More importantly, he would learn by constant observation, watching the knights and nobles, internalizing their behaviors, their speech patterns, their code of honor, a silent, continuous apprenticeship in nobility. As the page matured, often around 14 years old, he would become a squire, a more advanced role with greater responsibilities, directly assisting a knight. Imagine the young squire, now taller, stronger, his body more accustomed to physical exertion, assisting his knight in preparing for battle or training. He would polish his knight's armor and weapons for hours. The rhythmic rub of a polishing cloth on steel, the soft clinking of chainmail, filling the quiet courtyard. He would care for his knight's warhorse, meticulously grooming its coat, braiding its mane, and feeding it. The sounds would be the soft nicker of the horse, the rhythmic brush of a currycomb, the gentle rustle of hay. During battle, a squire would stand ready, in a position of grave danger, ready to retrieve a dropped weapon, provide a fresh horse, or assist his fallen knight. This was a quiet, intense period of practical training, of learning to operate in profound silence and under immense pressure. A squire's education would deepen. He would begin to learn the basics of swordsmanship and horsemanship, not in playful games, but in rigorous, repetitive drills. Imagine the rhythmic clang of practice swords in the castle yard, the loud grunts of effort, the soft thud of bodies hitting the ground, all under the watchful, silent eye of an older knight. He would practice with a heavy wooden sword, repeating the same strokes, the same parries, countless times, until the movements became fluid, instinctive. He would learn to ride a warhorse, not just for travel, but for combat, feeling the powerful muscles of the animal beneath him, learning to communicate through subtle shifts of weight and pressure. The sounds of horses' hooves on the dirt, the creak of saddles, the distant shouts of training, these were the sounds of his physical education. He would also learn the code of chivalry, not from books, but from the example of his knight, from hushed conversations, slowly internalizing the values of courage, honor, and loyalty. The underlying reality for children in both monasteries and castles was one of profound separation from their birth families and an enforced adherence to a rigid, often impersonal, institutional routine. While they gained skills, education, and often more security than peasant children, they also experienced a unique form of emotional detachment. Imagine the quiet yearning for the familiar warmth of their mother's touch, the boisterous laughter of their siblings, or the simple comforts of their village home. This emotional discipline, the constant need to adapt to a new, formal environment, to suppress outward displays of homesickness or sadness, was a profound, silent struggle. They learned stoicism from a young age, internalizing the idea that personal feelings were secondary to duty and obedience. The long hours of quiet service, the repetitive tasks, and the structured learning created a unique kind of monotony, whether it was copying Latin texts for hours in a scriptorium, silently serving at a noble's table, or endlessly polishing armor in a castle courtyard. The daily life was filled with tasks that, though purposeful, were repetitive and physically demanding for young bodies and minds. This constant, unceasing rhythm, this absence of spontaneous play or emotional indulgence, profoundly shaped their character, instilling a deep sense of discipline, patience, and resilience. The sounds of their tasks, the distant echoes of their new world, the quiet hum of their own thoughts, these were the companions of their long, structured days. As the sun began its slow, gradual descent towards the western horizon, painting the vast castle grounds or monastery gardens with fiery oranges, deep purples, and soft fading blues, the air gradually, slowly, began to cool again, bringing with it the damp, pervasive chill of the medieval night. The shadows lengthened, stretching endlessly across the courtyards and through the cloisters, before finally, inevitably, merging into the complete, profound darkness of night. The child, weary from their day of quiet service and disciplined learning, would slowly prepare for the evening. The sounds of the institution at night would be the soft, rhythmic breathing of sleeping companions, the gentle crackling of a dying fire, the subtle creak of old timbers as the building responded to the cooling night air, and the distant muffled calls of watchmen or nocturnal animals, all blending into a soothing natural lullaby. This deep, shared sleep, born of an entire day of unyielding discipline, constant service, and profound emotional adaptation, prepared their young bodies for the inevitable, relentless rhythm of the coming dawn, knowing that tomorrow, the sun would rise again, and the endless, silent, demanding routines of medieval life, within the walls of the monastery or castle, would simply, quietly, continue guiding them, through sheer weariness, towards a deep, restorative sleep, a peaceful surrender to the ancient, eternal patterns of existence. Having deeply immersed ourselves in the stark, unyielding realities of a medieval child's early life, feeling the persistent grime on their skin, sensing the pervasive odors of unwashed garments, and understanding the profound physical demands of their repetitive, yet essential, toil within the humble peasant hut, the vast demanding fields, and even within the disciplined walls of monasteries and castles, let us now, slowly and with a profound shift in perspective, turn our gaze. We are about to step into a vastly different, yet equally poignant, realm within the same ancient civilization, the private world of a medieval child's play, the simple objects that brought them fleeting joy, the games that mimicked adult life, and, inevitably, the ever-present, chilling shadow of death that profoundly shaped every aspect of their fragile existence. This is a narrative that seeks to transcend romanticized notions of carefree childhood, delving instead into the harsh, often unyielding, yet deeply revealing realities of innocence intertwined with hardship, of simple pleasures amidst constant vulnerability, creating unique and pervasive psychological challenges that would profoundly test the very sensibilities of a modern individual, especially a parent. Imagine, for a long, quiet moment, a group of medieval children, perhaps in a dusty village square, or a small, sun-dappled clearing near the edge of the forest. The air is cool, crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth, of distant wood smoke, and the subtle aroma of wild herbs. The sounds are soft, rhythmic, and intermittent. The gentle rustle of leaves as a light breeze passes, the distant lowing of a cow, the almost imperceptible hum of unseen insects. In this world, devoid of mass-produced plastic toys or elaborate electronic games, children's play was deeply rooted in their immediate environment, fueled by imagination, and often an unconscious mimicking of the adult world around them. Their playthings were simple, found objects from nature or crude items fashioned by hand, each one imbued with the profound power of imaginative transformation. One of the most common playthings for a medieval child would have been a simple stick. Imagine a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, his hands calloused from daily chores, carefully selecting a smooth, straight stick from the forest floor. This stick, in his imagination, transforms instantly. It becomes a sword, swung with quiet, practiced arcs, mimicking the nightly training he might observe from afar or hear tales about. The sounds would be the soft swish of the stick cutting through the air, the gentle thud as it struck a make-believe opponent, or the quiet grunts of his own effort. Or the stick might become a horse, trotted quietly across the dusty ground, its imaginary hooves making soft, rhythmic clop-clop sounds. This simple, repetitive play, requiring immense imagination and physical engagement, was a form of learning, slowly internalizing the roles and skills of adult life. The profound silence of the forest, broken only by his earnest play, would be his vast, personal playground. For a young girl, perhaps a piece of discarded cloth, or a bundle of straw, or a corncob, could be transformed into a simple, cherished doll. Imagine her small hands carefully wrapping the cloth around a stick, giving it a rudimentary head and body, perhaps tying a few strands of straw for hair. This doll, though crude, would be her constant companion. She would engage in quiet, repetitive play, mimicking her mother's daily chores, pretending to cook with small pebbles for food, gently rocking the doll to sleep, or softly singing a lullaby, her voice a low, melodic murmur. The sounds would be soft, the rustle of the cloth doll, the gentle tapping of pebbles, the quiet hum of her song, all blending into a soothing background for her imaginative world. These were not simply games, they were a quiet, subconscious preparation for her future role as a wife and mother, deeply ingrained through endless repetition. Simple games of skill and coordination were also common, often played with natural objects. Imagine a group of children, perhaps sitting on the earth, playing knucklebones, using small animal bones or polished stones. The rhythmic clinkling of the bones as they were tossed and caught, the soft murmur of voices as they counted points, These were the sounds of quiet, communal play. Another common game involved throwing stones, attempting to hit a target, or building small rudimentary castles out of mud and pebbles, their tiny hands meticulously shaping the earth. The soft plink of a stone hitting its mark, the gentle crumble of mud, these were the sounds of their simple, creative efforts. The games were repetitive, often requiring great patience and precise hand-eye coordination, slowly building their physical dexterity and their social bonds in a quiet, unobtrusive manner. The absence of elaborate toys meant that every object, no matter how mundane, held the potential for imaginative play. A discarded piece of wood could become a boat floating down a stream, its gentle bobbing motions captivating a young child for hours. A colorful feather found in a field could become a magical wand, or a precious adornment, its soft texture a delight against the skin. The simplicity of their playthings forced a deeper engagement with their imagination and with the natural world around them. The sounds of their play were always subtle, always blending into the ambient sounds of the village or the forest, a testament to a childhood lived close to the earth, intimately connected to its rhythms, far from the stimulating distractions of modern life. However, woven into this tapestry of simple play and endless toil was the ever-present, chilling shadow of death, a profound and undeniable reality that shaped every aspect of medieval childhood. Infant and child mortality rates were staggeringly high. Imagine a family having celebrated the birth of a new child, only to face the quiet, heartbreaking reality of its passing within a few short weeks or months, due to illness, malnutrition, or unforeseen complications. The quiet joy of a newborn's cry would often be replaced by the profound silence of its absence. For the parents, this was an almost constant underlying sorrow, a quiet resignation to a fate that often seemed beyond their control. The emotional discipline required to endure such repeated loss, to carry on with daily life despite the pervasive grief, was immense, yet often unseen. Diseases, often brought by unsanitary conditions, lack of medical understanding, and poor nutrition, swept through medieval communities with terrifying efficiency, claiming the lives of countless children. Imagine a quiet household where a child, perhaps vibrant and full of life just days before, slowly succumbs to a fever, to dysentery, or to a cough that turns fatal. The sounds in the hut would shift from the normal murmur of family life to the soft, labored breathing of the sick child, the quiet weeping of the mother, the whispered prayers of a visiting priest. The air would feel heavy with unspoken dread. The sight of a small body, growing cold and still, was a tragically common experience, a profound, chilling reminder of life's fragility. This constant threat of an invisible killer, quietly lurking in every corner, shaped the medieval understanding of childhood as a precarious journey, a race against unseen forces. The process of mourning a lost child, though deeply felt, was often private and subdued, particularly for peasant families who had little time for prolonged grieving. Amidst the demands of survival, imagine the quiet preparation of a small body for burial, gently washing it with cool water, wrapping it in a simple linen shroud, its fabric rough yet comforting. The sounds would be soft, hushed, the quiet rustle of cloth, the gentle murmur of prayers. There would be no elaborate funeral services, no grand wakes. The burial itself would be a quiet, solemn affair. A small, simple wooden coffin, or sometimes just a linen-wrapped body, would be lowered slowly into a shallow grave in the churchyard. The sounds would be the soft thud of earth being scattered onto the coffin, the quiet murmurs of final prayers, and the profound silence that follows the completion of the ritual. The parents, their faces etched with quiet sorrow, would return to their hut, to the relentless demands of daily life, their grief a private, unspoken burden. The graveyards themselves serve as silent, poignant testaments to the tragic reality of medieval childhood mortality. Imagine walking slowly, deliberately, through an ancient churchyard, its ground uneven, covered with wild grass and moss-covered stones. You might notice the sheer number of small, unmarked mounds, or tiny weathered headstones, often just simple, uncarved stones, signifying the resting places of countless infants and young children who never lived to adulthood. The inscriptions, when present, are often simple: a name, a date of death, sometimes just a single initial. The sheer density of these small graves, clustered together, speaks volumes about the pervasive presence of child death in medieval society. The silence here is immense, broken only by the gentle whisper of the wind through ancient trees, and the distant murmur of modern life, offering a profound space for quiet contemplation on lives that ended too soon. The medieval understanding of childhood was inherently different from our own. Children were often seen as little adults, expected to contribute to the household economy from a very young age. This meant that the concept of a protected, carefree period of childhood as we know it, filled with play, education, and emotional nurturing, was a luxury rarely afforded, particularly to peasant children. Imagine the profound difference in perspective. A child's value was often tied to their ability to perform labor, to contribute to the family's survival, rather than to their individual potential or emotional development. This harsh reality, while difficult to comprehend for a modern mind, fostered a unique kind of resilience, a quiet acceptance of duty from a tender age. This pervasive reality of childhood, its simple, repetitive joys, its profound contributions to family survival, and its constant vulnerability to the silent, unseen hand of death profoundly shaped the medieval child's understanding of their world. Their ability to find moments of quiet play amidst relentless labor, their deep connection to family despite personal hardships, and their quiet resilience in the face of immense loss are powerful testaments to the enduring strength of the human spirit. And as you contemplate these quiet, profound stories, these often overlooked realities of medieval childhood, may your own mind find a similar stillness, a deep sense of calm, preparing you gently for a truly restful and dream-filled sleep, a peaceful surrender to the ancient eternal patterns of existence. Having deeply immersed ourselves in the stark, unyielding realities of a medieval peasant child's early life, experiencing the relentless physical toil in the vast fields, sensing the persistent grime of their humble dwellings, and then contemplating the quiet struggles of children serving within monasteries and castles, and finally, having reflected on the simple joys of their rudimentary games, alongside the ever-present chilling shadow of widespread mortality, let us now slowly, and with a profound shift in perspective, turn our gaze. We are about to step into a vastly different, yet equally disciplined and profoundly structured realm within the same ancient civilization. The daily lives of noble children, the sons and daughters of medieval lords and ladies, residing within the magnificent, yet often emotionally distant confines of castles and grand manors. This is a narrative that seeks to transcend romanticized notions of privileged childhood, delving instead into the harsh, often unyielding, yet deeply repetitive and surprisingly uniform routines that govern the lives of these young individuals, bound by the relentless, predictable, yet powerful demands of lineage, formal education, and a future predetermined by birth, far from the spontaneous freedoms we might associate with childhood today. Imagine, for a long, quiet moment, the very start of such a day for a medieval noble child, deeply rooted in the ancient patterns of elite existence, yet profoundly different from any modern childhood. The hour is often still quite early, long before the first hint of golden light has even begun to fully illuminate the cold, grey eastern sky, which is still softly shrouded in the deep, cool, indigo blue of pre-dawn. You are awakened not by a jarring alarm, nor by the subtle shift in air, but by the gentle, almost imperceptible stirrings of your personal attendants, trained to move with the utmost discretion. Perhaps the soft, distant chiming of a small ornate clock from a nearby hall, or the low, almost imperceptible murmur of servants, beginning their quiet preparations in the outer chambers, gently pulls you back from the depths of sleep. Your spacious bedchamber, often a solar or a richly appointed private room within the castle, feels cool and dark, its thick stone walls holding the night's coolness against the encroaching morning warmth. The air within carries a complex, clean, comforting scent of polished wood, of antique furniture, of old tapestries, and perhaps the subtle, lingering perfume of dried herbs or beeswax from a distant candle. There is no hard-yielding bed to endure. Your bed, often a grand, four-poster affair with silk hangings and a soft mattress filled with down or feathers, offers unparalleled comfort, its smooth linen sheets, a gentle caress against your body. You rise slowly, gracefully, your small muscles perfectly rested, accustomed to a life devoid of strenuous physical labor. The polished wooden floor or finely tiled surface beneath your bare feet is cool, smooth, its texture unfamiliar with the roughness of earth. The process of preparing for the day is unhurried, meticulous, and deeply ritualistic, utterly dependent on a retinue of devoted attendants. There is no frantic rush. Instead, your personal maid or page, moving with trained grace and efficiency, would bring a basin of warm, scented water for washing. Imagine splashing the warm, fragrant liquid onto your face, feeling its gentle caress awaken your skin, its subtle perfume filling your senses. Your hair, often long and meticulously cared for, would then be carefully brushed and styled by the gentle hands of your attendant. Dressing in your daily attire is another act of quiet, precise layering, often involving multiple delicate garments. You would carefully select your undergarments of fine linen or silk, which are then meticulously placed upon your small body by your attendants. Over this, you would don your everyday noble robes, perhaps made of richly embroidered wool or silk that whispers softly as it settles around your form. Each fold, each knot, each intricate fastening is made with a deliberate hand, ensuring that the garment sits perfectly, reflecting the outer order that mirrors inner discipline and your precise status within the castle's strict hierarchy. The subtle rustle of the fine fabric as you move, the feel of its luxurious texture against your skin, are quiet sensations that become part of the background of your morning, a constant reminder of your privileged, yet constrained, existence. Breakfast, a light and refined meal, would be a serene affair, often taken in a private dining alcove or a small, intimate chamber, overlooking a tranquil inner courtyard or a meticulously kept garden. Imagine the delicate clinking of silver cutlery against fine pewter or ceramic plates, the gentle pouring of cool water or diluted wine into simple goblets. The aromas would be light and pleasant, the subtle, sweet scent of freshly baked white bread or delicate pastries, perhaps a piece of local cheese, fresh fruit from the castle orchards, or a small portion of cured meat. The conversation, if any, would be hushed, perhaps discussing the day's scheduled lessons or activities, or gentle news from within the castle. There would be no hurried rush, no sense of urgency. The meal was a time for calm, personal reflection, for savoring the quiet comforts of a perfectly ordered, secure home before the more formal engagements of the day truly began. The discreet movements of the household staff, ensuring every need was anticipated and met with silent grace, would contribute to an unbroken sense of peace, a constant, underlying hum of well-being. Following breakfast, the medieval noble child's day would quickly transition to a rigorous, structured education, far removed from the physical labor of peasant children. This education was not optional. It was a fundamental duty, designed to prepare them for their predetermined roles in the complex feudal society. Imagine a young noble child, perhaps a boy of 8 or 9, seated patiently at a heavy wooden desk in a quiet study room or a small library within the castle. The air here would be cool, still, carrying the faint scent of old parchment, of beeswax from candles, and perhaps a subtle aroma of wood smoke from a distant fireplace. The light, filtering gently through narrow arched windows, would illuminate the intricate pages of a Latin primer or a book of arithmetic. Their lessons would be long, demanding, and often profoundly repetitive. They would begin by learning Latin, the universal language of scholarship and the church. Imagine countless hours spent meticulously copying Latin phrases, word by word, onto wax tablets with a stylus, or onto small pieces of parchment with a quill pen. The rhythmic scratching of the stylus, the soft rustle of parchment, the quiet murmur of their own voice as they recited Latin declensions and conjugations. These would be the dominant sounds of their early intellectual toil. This was a slow, painstaking process of memorization and careful transcription, designed to instill linguistic proficiency and an unwavering discipline of the mind. Later, they would progress to arithmetic, logic, and rhetoric, always with a focus on meticulous understanding and precise articulation. For noble boys, a significant portion of their education was dedicated to military training, even from a young age, preparing them for their eventual role as knights or warriors. This was not chaotic play, but a rigorous, structured regimen. Imagine a young boy, perhaps 10 or 11, already serving as a page, practicing with a small wooden sword in the castle courtyard. The sounds would be the soft thwack of wood on wood, the rhythmic footsteps of his instructor, and the quiet grunts of his own effort. He would learn basic horsemanship, the gentle rhythm of riding, the subtle communication with the animal. He would also learn skills like hunting with falcons or hounds, not just for sport, but as a practical skill for providing food and for strategic thinking. The rhythmic flapping of a falcon's wings, the gentle baying of hounds, these were the sounds of his early martial education. This physical training, though demanding, was performed with discipline and a sense of purpose, a continuous preparation for his future duties. Noble girls, while not trained for combat, received an equally rigorous, yet different, education, primarily focused on managing a large household, on piety, and on the arts. Imagine a young noble girl, perhaps 10 years old, seated patiently in the solar learning intricate embroidery from her mother or a lady in waiting, her small hands, guided by an older, more experienced hand, would meticulously stitch delicate patterns onto fine linen or silk, each stitch a testament to patience and fine motor control. The rhythmic prick of the needle, the soft pull of the thread, would create a soothing, repetitive sound, a form of active meditation. She would also learn to read, often in Latin and her vernacular language, poring over religious texts, epic poems, and chronicles. She would learn to manage servants, to oversee the castle's provisions, and to understand the complex etiquette of courtly life. The sounds of her quiet study, the soft rustle of pages, the gentle murmur of her own voice as she read, would fill the tranquil chamber. Beyond formal lessons, noble children were also immersed in a world of strict etiquette and social decorum. They learned, through constant observation and gentle correction, how to carry themselves with grace, how to speak politely, how to bow or curtsy correctly, and how to interact with people of different social ranks. This was a continuous, subtle education in social navigation, designed to instill the refined manners expected of their station. Imagine a young noble child, carefully observing his parents at a grand feast, mimicking their measured movements, their polite conversations, their controlled expressions. The silent lessons of observation were as crucial as any formal instruction, slowly internalizing the complex rules of noble society. Play for noble children, while more elaborate than for peasant children, were still often structured and purpose-driven, or simply less spontaneous than modern play. They might have wooden dolls dressed in fine clothes, toy knights, or miniature castles. Games might involve chess or backgammon, teaching strategic thinking, or hunting games with bows and arrows in the castle grounds. The sounds of their play would be softer, more contained, the gentle clinking of chess pieces, the soft thud of a wooden arrow hitting a target, the hushed voices of imaginative play. There was always an underlying sense of instruction, of preparing them for their future roles. Even their leisure was subtly guided towards the development of skills and virtues appropriate to their noble status. The clothing worn by noble children, while far more luxurious than that of peasants, still reflected the practicalities of the age, though they would have many changes of attire. Imagine a young noble, dressed in a tunic of fine wool or silk, perhaps brightly dyed, with expensive hose and soft leather shoes. The fabrics would be softer, cleaner, infused with subtle perfumes. Their hair would be meticulously groomed, often styled to reflect current fashions. The care of their clothing, though performed by servants, was still a daily ritual of brushing, airing, and repairing. This constant attention to appearance was a reflection of their status and the importance of presenting a dignified image in a hierarchical society. The pervasive underlying reality for noble children was one of profound expectations and a predetermined future. Their lives were not their own to choose. From the moment of their birth, their path was largely set. The eldest son would inherit the title and lands. A daughter would be married off to form strategic alliances. This created a unique form of emotional detachment and a profound sense of duty. Imagine a young noble child, quietly contemplating their future marriage to an unknown spouse, or the heavy burden of inheriting a vast estate. This emotional discipline, the constant need to adapt to a predetermined destiny, to suppress outward displays of personal desire or disappointment, was a profound, silent struggle. They learned stoicism from a young age, internalizing the idea that personal feelings were secondary to lineage, duty, and the stability of their house. The long hours of quiet study, the repetitive physical training, and the structured social etiquette created a unique kind of monotony, even amidst luxury. Whether it was meticulously copying Latin texts, diligently practicing swordsmanship, or patiently observing the complex rules of courtly life, the daily routine was filled with tasks that, though purposeful, were repetitive and physically demanding for young bodies and minds. This constant, unceasing rhythm, this absence of spontaneous freedom, profoundly shaped their character, instilling a deep sense of discipline, patience, and resilience. The sounds of their tasks, the distant echoes of castle life, the quiet hum of their own thoughts, these were the companions of their long, structured days. As the sun began its slow, gradual descent towards the western horizon, painting the vast castle grounds with fiery oranges, deep purples, and soft fading blues, the air gradually, slowly, began to cool again, bringing with it the damp, pervasive chill of the medieval night. The shadows lengthened, stretching endlessly across the courtyards and through the great halls, before finally, inevitably, merging into the complete, profound darkness of night. The noble child, weary from their day of quiet study, disciplined training, and structured social interaction, would slowly prepare for the evening. The sounds of the castle at night would be the soft, rhythmic breathing of sleeping companions, the gentle crackling of a dying fire in the great hall, the subtle creak of old timbers as the mighty structure responded to the cooling night air, and the distant muffled calls of watchmen or nocturnal animals, all blending into a soothing, natural lullaby. This deep, shared sleep, born of an entire day of unyielding discipline, constant service, and profound emotional adaptation, prepared their young bodies for the inevitable, relentless rhythm of the coming dawn, knowing that tomorrow the sun would rise again, and the endless, silent, demanding routines of medieval noble life, with all its gilded constraints, would simply, quietly, continue guiding them, through sheer weariness, towards a deep, restorative sleep, a peaceful surrender to the ancient, eternal patterns of existence.